Alright, let's dive into this story, because it's one of those situations where you can't help but think, how did we get here? And honestly, it's a lot more complex than just a headline about a tragic incident. So, let's break it down, but more importantly, let's talk about what it means and why it's so unsettling. First off, the hook here is obvious. Elijah Bieniemy, the son of Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, allegedly shot his mother, Mia, and now we are learning about a series of disturbing events leading up to it. But here's what's really striking. 2 days before the shooting, Elijah called the police to complain that his parents were withholding his firearms. Personally, I think this detail is huge. It's not just about the weapons, it's about the desperation and the breakdown in communication. What many people don't realize is that these kinds of calls are often cries for help, not just random complaints. If you take a step back and think about it, this wasn't just a dispute over guns, it was a red flag waving in the wind. Now, let's talk about the broader context. This wasn't the first time the police had been called to the Bieniemy home. There was a welfare check in June, initiated by a counselor from Elijah's remote college. From my perspective, this is where things get really interesting. A counselor felt concerned enough to call the police. That's not something that happens lightly. It suggests that Elijah's behavior had been raising alarms for a while. And yet, the police determined there was no urgent threat. Here's where I have to ask, did we miss something? Or is it just really hard to predict these situations, even when the signs are there? What makes this even more complicated is Elijah's claim that he's a certified UFC fighter and needed his weapons for self-defense. Honestly, this feels like a detail that's easy to dismiss, but it's actually pretty revealing. It's not just about the guns, it's about control, identity, and a sense of security. In my opinion, this speaks to a deeper issue of someone feeling like they're losing grip on their life. And when you add in the fact that he was enrolled in remote college classes, it paints a picture of someone who might have been isolated or struggling to find stability. One thing that immediately stands out is how quickly things can escalate when mental health issues are involved. Speaking of mental health, Elijah's public defender has requested a mental evaluation, stating that he appears to suffer from significant mental health issues. This raises a deeper question. How do we balance accountability with compassion in cases like this? Personally, I think it's a tough line to walk. On one hand, the actions are inexcusable. On the other, it's clear that something was deeply wrong here. What this really suggests is that our systems, whether it's law enforcement, mental health care, or family support, aren't always equipped to handle these situations effectively. And let's not forget the human side of this. Mia Bieniemy, Elijah's mother, was critically wounded but is now out of the ICU and improving. That's a small glimmer of hope in an otherwise devastating story. But it also reminds us that the impact of these events ripples out far beyond the headlines. Eric Bieniemy, a prominent figure in the NFL, is dealing with a family crisis that's playing out in the public eye. What many people don't realize is how often these kinds of tragedies intersect with seemingly unrelated worlds, like sports. It's a reminder that no one is immune to these issues. So, where does this leave us? Honestly, I'm left with more questions than answers. How do we better identify and address these warning signs? What role does mental health play in preventing these kinds of tragedies? And how do we support families who are navigating these impossible situations? This story isn't just about one incident, it's about the bigger systems and societal issues that allowed it to happen. If you take a step back and think about it, it's a wake-up call for all of us. Closing thought, this story is a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous situations aren't the ones we see coming. They are the ones that simmer beneath the surface, unnoticed until it's too late. So, here's my question for you: what can we do, as individuals and as a society, to make sure these red flags don't go ignored? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.